What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, and back with a special one this time. And we're going to listen to one of the tracks on The Great Band Era, a multi-record compilation sent to me by Kim a little while back, along with another one called The Magic World of Melodies. I think I reacted to one tune from that, but we'll start going through both of them in more detail. And yes, there are, I think, 10 records in here, and then there's a bonus record, which is olde-timey tunes from movies. So there's a whole wealth of early to mid 20th century music on the compilation. I'm a big fan of older styles, including big band music specifically. In fact, this compilation centers from 1936 to 1945, as the booklet here shows. And we're going to start with record 1, but I'm going to jump to track 2, because track 2 is performed by Duke Ellington and his orchestra, and I have a little bit of background hearing Duke Ellington. I think my parents had a couple Duke Ellington albums, or maybe compilations that came later on CDs, so it is a name that I'm somewhat familiar with. But I looked on Wikipedia because I was curious. Some of these old standards, they're actually based on melodies that go back to the 19th century, or they were written by one person, but then it's another person's version that comes a few years later that is the most famously known. This is sort of like that, although Duke Ellington is directly responsible for the name of the tune and ultimately its composition, though the lyrics actually come from a couple years later. Let me explain. Billy Strayhorn was a writer and composer who knew Duke Ellington, and due to some issue where the major record labels were raising their licensing fees, Duke Ellington was looking for some new music, because some of the tunes that they would play live on the radio at the time, he suddenly wasn't allowed to play without paying much more in fees. So he told Billy Strayhorn to take a trip from, I forget, was it Philadelphia? I forget where Billy Strayhorn was located, but Duke was in New York, and he gave him instructions on how to get up to his house and studio in New York, and the first part of the directions was take the A train. And so Billy had that phrase in his head, and I guess he was thinking about, and I'm forgetting the other composer's name, but he was thinking about this other composer and the way he wrote for trombones and trumpets and saxophone, and he wanted to write a tune that was somewhat similar, so he composed the piece under the name Take the A Train. And then a couple years later, because I think that was 39, and then a couple years later, one person wrote lyrics for it, and then I think in 44, a different person wrote lyrics for it, and that version with the second set of lyrics is the one Duke Ellington became most famous for performing. So all that being said, I don't know exactly which recording or what year this is. I'm sure it may say in the booklet. Since I have it out, I might as well look. Let's see. These are all indices, new records from old, guide for the great bands, the big bands come. It's giving us sort of a history year by year about the evolution of the big band's sound. The band leaders, I'm sure there's going to be a part in here. Duke Ellington, yep, there it is. Duke Ellington is generally thought of as one of the most important creators and performers in jazz. He is all of that as pianist, orchestra leader, and composer, but his talents encompass much more than just jazz. His work covers the entire span of contemporary American music. So yeah, this is about all the artists on here, but I don't think it's going to give us specific information about this performance. So I guess we'll just listen to it. This is Duke Ellington and his orchestra performing a piece of music originally written by Billy Strayhorn, and it's called Take the A Train. Is this the right side? Record 1, is this side A though? That's the question. Okay, yes. So this, I'm trying to remember the name of the other. So it was from Pittsburgh, is where Billy Strayhorn originally came from, and the second set of lyrics, which I think is the one used by Ellington's band, were by Joa Sherrill, who she was a jazz vocalist. So yes, apparently the vocals or the lyrics in this version were written by Joa Sherrill. So here we go. Duke Ellington and his orchestra, the tune composed by Billy Strayhorn, and lyrics by Joa Sherrill, I believe. Well, there you go. So it was instrumental, but as I said, there are a couple different lyrical versions of that, and I'm trying to remember. The Delta Rhythm Boys apparently wrote the lyrics to the first vocalized performance of the track, but yes, again, Joe Sherrill is the one that I guess Duke Ellington and his orchestra began using more regularly after 1942. Was it 42 or 44? I had all this out in front of me. 44, I apologize. So yeah, ultimately, shout out to Billy Strayhorn. It's just a classic oldie-timey tune. You can see like a 1930s, 1940s ballroom. It was actually making me think of It's a Wonderful Life, which technically the scene at the high school dance in the early part of the movie would have been before any of this was written, but it's the kind of music that I associate with those old black and white ballroom, like dancing scenes in, classic movies. And ultimately, I enjoy the writing for the brass. A couple moments in particular, I don't know if it was like a muted trumpet or there was some like effect on the trumpet, but there was like a little riff in the middle of the track or the early part of the second half of the track that really stood out. And then there's some big flourishes, including those that are like a bit dissonant, not like terribly dissonant, but they have a bit of a intensity in the flourish. And just a couple little piano rolls, just a couple melodic flourishes on the piano that even though they're very small compared to all the brass going on and the overall rhythm, those were really good too. So yeah, just a cool composition, a throwback to a bygone era, but it's nice to have compilations like this. Once again, major shout out to Kim, who has shared all sorts of digital music, but also some physical media as well, and there is, to say, a wealth of material in just this compilation, never mind in addition to the magical world of melody, would be an understatement. So yeah, we'll go through more. I may jump around again, not just on this record, but the other 10 or 11 that are in there, and I'll just pick some that stand out for either, the composer or the performing orchestra or group and or the name of the track that may catch my eye, which was the case here, although it was also because I know who Duke Ellington is. So in any case, let me know what you think of this old-time tune, and I will see you next time. Peace.